Call the Brandon Select Board to order for May 9th. Thanks to those joining by Zoom and in person. This we don't have to do quite so fast. So what's the pleasure of the board on the agenda that was posted?
I make a motion to adopt it.
Second. Is there anything to be changed, added, or moved on the agenda? If not, all in favor of adopting the posted agenda, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Item 2, the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, April 25th.
Make a motion to approve those.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes as they were submitted. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes as they were submitted? None noted. All in favor of approval of these minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Item 3, the town manager's report, Mr. Atherton.
This is my report for May 9th. I attended the April 28th Rutland Regional Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. There's a V.S.A presentation on the Complete Streets program, discussion on cost-effective solutions for pedestrian safety, especially in and around crosswalks, which is interesting because Sean and I have been talking about discussing ways to make a couple of our crosswalks more visible to traffic, so this was a helpful discussion led by V-Trans. So hopefully you guys will see some things changing on some of our crosswalks. Arnold District Culvert Replacement Project has gone out to bid. There will be a pre-bid meeting on site on May 18th at 10 a.m. Bid openings will be at the town office on June 3rd at 10 a.m. I've now received 2 of the 3 appraisals for the next round of property buyouts on Newton Road. Both property owners are satisfied with the appraisal results and will be moving forward with the buyout process. The caution signs that we put on Sanderson Bridge and along Short Swamp Road have unfortunately been stolen. It is unfortunate as the signs were placed there to deter lost trucks from attempting to drive into the bridge. And these signs were custom made and they were expensive. So yeah, it's really unfortunate someone had to steal those signs. And I will be out of town after tomorrow till the end of the week to attend a VLCT passive conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Rec news, the baseball diamond and fields are full with baseball and softball players. There are over 160 kids playing on 13 teams this spring season. Another reminder about Kindness and Safety Day at Neshby School on May 14th. The Neshby PTO Brandon Rec Brandon Toy Project sponsored event will be a great way for the community to reconnect. The ever popular free Omnia bike helmet giveaway will draw a crowd. Archery is back at Estabrook Park starting Thursdays in June. The Miss Michaela dance class recital is on Saturday, May 21st at the Brandon Town Hall at 6:30. And summer program is being released on the brandonrec.com website.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Mr. Atherton and Mr. Moore. Any questions for the town manager from the board?
Nope.
I had one follow-up from last meeting. Dave, if I could, have you had any meetings with the town attorney about the mosquito funding and so forth?
I have. I sent all of the information that we had on it to Connie. We've been playing she's been kind of emailing me with some extra questions and stuff. We're just trying to see if we can determine if there was something done really that, kind of hardened the fact that this was done for mosquito spray. So we're getting there.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the town manager from the public, whether on Zoom or here in the meeting room tonight? How about the meeting room first? 1, 2, 3. Nobody. Anybody on Zoom with a question for the town manager? Okay, if not, we can always call upon Mr. Atherton during other agenda items. And there's always public comment on each agenda item, but this is the dedicated agenda item. Is there anybody present on Zoom or in person who'd like to bring something before the board that did not make the posted agenda? Not hearing anything. Again, we'll move along, but it's a very small crowd tonight. It'll be easy to keep order, so if you have something you want to offer during a future item on the agenda, do not be bashful. So, item 5 is the Union Street Sidewalk Alternatives discussion, and there was a pretty great packet included in the board material about this, and I'll give it to Mr. Atherton, but I think he's gonna give it to one of the design engineers.
I am gonna pass it along to Brian Breslin, who's here with us on Zoom,
Great.
from Du Bois King. He's been, our guy here doing all the work on getting these, alternatives ready, and as you know, we did discuss some alternatives, I don't know, a year or so ago, just looking at costs, so this will kind of shore all that up, and maybe we can entertain a motion at the end of the meeting, or end of this would be good.
Great, thank you, Brian, for being here tonight. Are you gonna have anything like screen sharing, or is like the paper packet that we have the best thing for us to be referring to during your talk?
I was going to share my screen.
Yeah.
I believe, and then just go, you
Why
can
don't-
use
why
the
don't-
hard copies as
Yeah,
well.
why don't Tim facilitate that if you would, and maybe if those in the room, there's so few, if you wanna just pull up a chair so you can see what he's sharing. I know that at least one is probably interested in this. presentation.
I don't.
Well, we'll see what he's got there, and we'll all watch it.
Here, I'm gonna give you this as well, that way if you wanna look at.
It was hard to see the one online because it was
Yes.
sideways. Thank you very much, Jim.
So it's all yours, thanks so much, Brian.
It's still saying I am disabled, or the participant,
Okay.
the host needs
So,
to give me access.
Bill, so I just make him a
Just make him a
co-host?
co-host, I
Yeah.
find that to be the easiest.
There you go.
There, try that.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll begin. Again, Brian Breslin, Du Bois King. Thank you for having me here tonight. We are here tonight for the alternatives presentation. This process here is a requirement for the use of federal funds, which this project is using. You need to do look at at least 3 alternatives. I can get into those in a little bit. And just the photo you're seeing on the screen here on the first page is of Union Street looking north back to the center of town. And you can also see the recently constructed Vermont Railway at-grade crossing improvements. Purpose of this meeting is just wanting to provide everybody an overview of the project, the background, a little history, project development process using federal funds, purpose and need, getting into the presentation of the alternatives, and then follow up with any questions or comments anyone has. This is just a bird's eye view. I'm on slide 3 of the project limits. It's approximately 900 feet in length, and constructing both sides of the road, so 1,800 feet of sidewalk reconstruction. Project background, how this project got initiated was the town applied for a grant through the Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP, back in the fall of 2021, and I believe it's about a month turnaround from the applications is when the town found out that they were awarded this grant. And the picture you see on the screen here is the actual letter that was sent to V.S.A. Next slide is the V.S.A. Municipal Assistance Section Flowchart. This can be found on the V.S.A. website. This is just what the process that needs to be followed in using federal funds. I've circled in red the step we're at, which is at the project alternatives investigations. Next step would be an endorsement of a preferred alternative, and then from there would be developing conceptual plans and then NEPA documentation. A little bit back to local project history is previously we had local concerns on March 28th. I was present at the meeting. I gave an overview of the project and just requested feedback from the public. This was more of a listening session than anything. Several concerns were raised by a few of the property owners and select board members. Those being driveway grades, right-of-way, project schedule, more questions than concerns with the project schedule, property owner impacts, and drainage concerns. This slide here is just the purpose and needs statement. Again, because of the use of federal money, this needs to be developed for every project. The purpose of this project is just to improve and enhance safety, mobility, and connectivity for pedestrians along the project. And the need is there. Just a couple things to point out is the existing sidewalk corridor is lacking in ADA compliance. For example, sidewalk cross slope, not having adequate curb ramps in a couple areas at the intersections, not having detectable warning surfaces. And much of this was taken actually from the Town of Brandon's grant application letter. So earlier I mentioned alternatives. At a minimum, 3 alternatives need to be evaluated, one of which should always, I believe FHWA even says one of which should always be the no-build alternative. So for our first alternative is the no-build. What you're seeing before you is just a typical section with no proposed improvements. The dotted line is the existing ground. And then this is what was, I believe, presented at the local concerns meeting on March 28th. It's just existing conditions. You can see here the roadway widths, the sidewalk, right-of-way lines, property ownership, utility poles, underground water and sewer. And then this is sheet 2. And then alternative 2, this is a build scenario. For this scenario, we are proposing it's basically a curved sidewalk. To begin with, I'm proposing a 30-foot curb-to-curb width. Excuse me. In the town's grant application, it was mentioned that bicyclists use this corridor as well to negate US 7. So I chose to have a 30-foot curb-to-curb width, so two 11-foot travel lanes and 4-foot shoulders. That generally matches the existing width. Is actually probably a little bit wider than what the existing width is currently. I'm proposing a vertical granite curb for the curbing. As an alternate, we could consider concrete curbing. Right on the left side of the roadway or on this section here, I have a 5-foot concrete sidewalk. Outside of that, I'm proposing a 2-foot panel at the same grade as the sidewalk. That's due to constructability and if in the event 3 people are passing at the same location on the sidewalk, i.e. 2 people walking down, 1 person walking up the hill, it can get tight with just 5 feet of width. So beyond that, I'm proposing to put in a 1-on-4 back cut slope that is perceived as a mobile slope. And then on the right side, or the easterly side of the road, the only difference is that we are proposing to put in a 3-foot grass strip between the vertical granite curb and the 5-foot Portland cement concrete sidewalk, and that is due to the existing utility poles along that section. For the most part, they line up fairly well in that 3 feet. So we're trying to avoid utility impacts with this project. This is just a zoomed in view, showing a little more detail. And then the one thing I did not mention on the previous slide was that there are a couple areas where there is old marble retaining walls. In those areas, we'd be proposing to reconstruct in some way those walls to mimic existing additions. And what you're seeing above the section where it says vertical granite curb, 36-inch, and then subdivision gravel, that's our conceptual alternative for those areas. This is alternative 2 in plan view. I'd like to point everyone's attention to the key down at the bottom on the left. Grayed areas are sidewalk, proposed sidewalk. Red areas are proposed driveways, and then the green areas are proposed grass areas. So one of the things we're doing at the corner of North Railroad Ave and Church Street, Union Street, is we would be putting in pedestrian signage, curb ramps with detectable warning surfaces. We are all, and pavement markings or crosswalk markings at that intersection area. We are also proposing for this alternative to put in centerline yellow markings, 4-inch yellow markings, or centerline markings with 4-inch white edge lines to delineate the edge of the travel way for vehicles. Also, with this alternative, we are proposing drainage. And then this is just sheet 2 of the same. We're similar to sheet 1, yellow center line, white edge line. We're showing 18-inch pipe and catch basins through this area at the curb line. Reconstructing the driveways. We are reconstructing the walkways and or steps if they're impacted. And then moving on to the cost opinion. Big ticket, as circled in red, we believe this cost opinion is in the range of $572,000. There are several design assumptions that come into play with that $572,000. For example, we are proposing a 20% contingency at this point as the design is refined, getting into preliminary and final plans. That 20% will go downwards to 0. Other thing worth mentioning is we're carrying $100,000 plus of stormwater improvements with piping and catch basins and trenching and select backfill for that. So moving on, this is alternative 3. It's very similar to alternative 2. The only major difference is we're getting rid of the vertical granite curbing, and in its place is the 5-foot green strip. So in comparing this one versus alternative 2, the sidewalk will be located 5 feet further away from the road or into the yards or properties. This is just a zoomed in view showing the same. So moving on, this is the plan view for alternative 3. It's the same, showing the same things as alternative 2. Gray is the sidewalk, red are driveways, green is the grass strip. We're proposing to still put in pavement markings, signage, detectable warning surfaces, center line pavement markings, edge line pavement markings. We're also proposing to put in stormwater improvements, piping and catch basins through this area. And then this is just sheet 2 showing the same as sheet 1. alternative 3 cost opinion. We believe this cost opinion is in the neighborhood of $553,000. Again, similar to alternative 2, we're carrying a lot of quantity and costs associated with stormwater improvements. Additionally, we're also carrying 20% contingency. One thing I wanted to point out was that the private walkways and steps and porches, the impacts associated with that has not been fully evaluated with this alternative, so that $553,000 construction cost item might go upwards as this option is selected and further refined. Next slide is just an alternatives comparison. Alternative 1 does not meet the purpose and need of the project, whereas alternative 2 and 3 does. Resource impacts, obviously no build has no resource impacts. Alternative 2 has less because we're generally reconstructing on the existing sidewalk alignment, and alternative 3 being pushed farther away from the road would have additional resource impacts. And by resource impacts, I mean historical and or archaeological impacts. For utility impacts, we have, I've stated no utility impacts for either alternative, and by utility impacts, I mean overhead impacts. We are proposing to adjust the sidewalk around the poles on the east side of the roadway so that there's no need to relocate the poles. There is potential to have water and or sewer impacts with the proposed stormwater improvements. However, because of the grading, we're currently under the impression that it can be designed around or with minimal improvements or minimal impacts to underground utilities. And then I guess private property impacts is similar to right-of-way impacts. These alternative 3 is further away from the roadway, so that alternative would have the greatest amount of impacts. Alternative 2 and 3 does meet grant requirements, whereas the no build obviously does not. In terms of construction schedule, both should be in the neighborhood of 2024 construction. If I had to say one was more or less than the other, potentially alternative 3 could be further down the line than alternative 2 because of additional property and right-of-way impacts and the right-of-way acquisition process associated with that. And then just finally, construction cost opinion. As I mentioned previously, alternative 2, we believe is in the neighborhood of $572,000, whereas alternative 3 is $553,000. This is a spreadsheet of our current estimated schedule for the project. You'll see on the left-hand side all of the tasks remaining. Generally speaking, this process takes a long time to develop. I believe even on the grant application at the very top in red on all the grants that says this process can take years, and I'm showing 2 years as of right now. Things that could potentially move 2024 construction into the fall or later, potentially could be right-of-way acquisition, depending on how long that takes. Yes, finally, Dave mentioned this. In order to move forward, with this project move forward, the town should make a decision about which alternative to proceed, or and with that, I am done with my presentation and would ask for any questions or comments you have.
Thank you very much, Brian. That was super helpful, I think, to illuminate the plans that we got to see a couple of days ago. I'll open it up to questions from the floor. There's some folks here, just for those of you who are on Zoom, there's a Union Street interested person here, and maybe I'll ask her. Shirley, do you have any questions first, or preference, or, yeah, go for it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Shirley Markland at 15 Union Street, and I've talked to Dave about this.
I think, it looks like Brian's leaning in, maybe he can't hear you. Do you want to just stay where he can see you and the microphone's
Yeah,
closer?
the microphone's right here, so if you moved up a little closer, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
I'm Shirley Markland, 15 Union Street. The southern property line that it shows here is not my understanding of my property line. And that will reflect any other questions I might have, but I don't know who to talk to about this, and also what a marker looks like for property. I've talked to Dave, and he said there are several. Where I think the property is property line. There is a solid orange plastic piece that's in a pipe that has lettering on top that is in the roots of the tree. But I don't know if that's a marker or not. My memory is that there was a tag there, and someone came and redid it and put this there. But that's my memory. I have my deed, and I have pictures of the marker, which is now in the weeds, so it's getting harder and harder to see. So I don't know where to go.
Sure. Brian, can you address, did you hear her concern?
Yes, I can answer that. The right-of-way and the property lines were taken from Vermont Center for Geographical Information, I think V.S.A. They are notoriously inaccurate. What is going to happen going forward is Dave Atherton will be reviewing right-of-way deeds and trying to come up with maybe a meets and bounds on the deeds. And we would be adjusting property lines as best we can to better fit what is actually there.
As a follow-up, there is a spruce tree that is marked for removal, which if it is on my property, which I believe it is, I put that in 4 years ago at a cost of $500. I put it in order to block the noise and sights of the Union Street Grocery. So that is a considerable cost to me. It appears to be there because of a driveway, and there is no driveway there. There was an old house in that lot, and the driveway was further to the east. So I'm not sure why there needs to be that driveway reconstruction and remove my tree.
I can answer the tree question in general. I guess I need more information on the driveway question. With respect to the tree question, we, I guess, arbitrarily assigned an action for each of the impacted trees. Again, if you're looking at the concept plans, we're showing a cut or a fill line, and if a tree or shrub or bush was in there, we've assigned an action item, whether that be remove and reset, or retain or do not impact. This is just a moment in time, a note. I fully intended that a lot of these action items would get modified based on property owner discussions and or during the right-of-way acquisition process.
Okay, that helps me.
Brian, have you had any discussions with the property owner on whose land that particular driveway is indicated or not yet?
I could use some help. If anybody has the plans, could you point me in the right area? So for example, the stationing along the center of the road, 1 + 0, 0, 2 + 0, 0.
About 4 + 0, 0, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's
It's about 4 plus-
4 plus 25.
On the left?
Yeah,
On the west side of the road, yeah.
Yep. I believe that was an existing entrance to that parcel. And then the other thing the reason why we're showing a driveway reconstruction was that we heard trucks need, I believe, that driveway to back into the grocery store area.
There is no driveway and it's a marble curb in that location, so there's no curb cut there.
Well, I guess we can remove that driveway at 4 + 25 left. However, if the property owner in the future decides to want to develop it again, it might be nice if it was there as an existing condition.
There is a driveway further down, because the house that was there was located right up against the property line, and the parking for the apartments in the house were below that, towards the railroad tracks. So that's where the driveway is about halfway into that property.
This could all change real quick, like, if we determine where the property line is between the two property owners.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, it sounds like this is an area that's gonna need a little bit of conversation with 2, maybe 3 landowners.
Yeah. So,
And so did Brian, did you give a little hint to a question I was gonna ask? Is Mr. Atherton gonna be the right-of-way agent for the project? Don't know yet. Because what is the other option?
We'll have a discussion about it.
We'll have a discussion. Other questions, Shirley, or concerns?
no, those were
That was
the
straight
ones
from the top.
on my property, and obviously one will affect the other. So I'll wait and see. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Don't go anywhere, because I think the board's probably gonna discuss and maybe come to some direction tonight.
Yeah.
So we'd want some input from you
Sure,
before
I'd
we
be
do
glad
that,
to.
while we're doing
Yeah.
that. Any other folks on Zoom or in person? Mr. Moore?
I just had a question about alternative 3 versus alternative 2. Can you hear me okay, Brian?
Yes.
So there's the 5-foot, there's the green strip, but no curbing, so does that mean that it just is a grade up? There's no difference in grade between the road and the grass strip? On alternative 3 versus the curbing on alternative 2?
It can vary, but it's generally, the sidewalk is about flush with the roadway.
Thank you.
Great question, great answer, thank you. Other folks on Zoom with questions, comments, preferences? More? Something else?
I was going to,
Yeah.
I'd like a little more explanation of that comment, the sidewalk is flush with the roadway.
On the plan with no curb,
Okay.
That's option 3.
which is option 3.
Okay. Does that mean that it would be like High Street where there is no distinction between,
Well, I think on this plan, there'd be the road, then some grass on both sides, then a sidewalk. Where on High Street, it's the road and then the sidewalk.
okay, so there would be clear, the sidewalk, the end of the sidewalk would be clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Questions from the board or comments? Preferences?
I have a preference of number 2. I think it's, in my experience, it's helpful to have a clear delineation from where you can drive and where you can walk. And so I like the idea of a curb. And I also like the idea of the least impact on homeowners. And so having option 2 seems to keep the sidewalk closer to the road and allow people to keep their property the way they've had it.
I tend to agree, yeah.
Just a comment, if you want to look at like areas in town where there is green space between sidewalk and road, go down Church Street and see how it's turned quickly into parking areas, which then the grass doesn't grow and it causes erosion. And then all of the sediment runs into people's driveways and they get after us for it, so.
Yeah, I don't find a lot of attraction on that.
Alternative 3, I mean, you could be open enough to wicked, an awful can of worms with your right of ways versus what you're doing. That $19,000 difference, I don't think it would take much to eat that up.
Brian, just, you would create the road width less if we had the green space, right? It wouldn't be 30 feet, would it?
That's open to interpretation. I'm proposing 30 feet curb to curb or sidewalk to, road edge to road edge.
With the green space too?
Yeah.
With the green space, but, that can be, discussed about, narrowing if we wanted to.
I don't feel a lot of current interest in option 3 from the board right now. So it sounds like we're leaning toward option 2 unless somebody wants to warn us off that. Any feelings?
No,
The curved sidewalk.
I did want to ask, is a 5-foot sidewalk standard? Is that like what Park Street has? And
Well, it's what all the new sidewalk is downtown. It has to
Okay.
meet 88
All right.
requirements too, so.
Good, it sounds so much bigger.
It may be.
It might be, those might be 4-foot sidewalks in front of your house. Yeah,
Oh.
they're pretty wide.
Yeah.
5 foot's nice.
Okay, so, Dave, what is our funding mechanism for the whole project, generally speaking? Do you have that?
Funny you ask. So currently, we have the $300,000 V-Trans MAB grant. And on my current project list that I've handed you guys a few times, I'm looking at the additional, roughly $300,000 from local options.
Local option, okay.
I like that idea.
And that's a big chunk of the local option, but that keeps replenishing itself.
By the time we get to
And by the
this,
time we get to this,
we'll
right?
we'll definitely have more in the coffers and so.
So basically,
And it's worth there.
spending $1 and getting $2 worth of value. And the dollar that we're spending is not property tax dollar, it's a local option dollar.
Motion, or
What's not to love? Yeah, let's have a motion.
I'll make a motion to go with alternative 2.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to proceed with alternative 2 as it was presented with the curved sidewalk. And the discussion has been that about $300,000 would be the V-Trans grant and the balance would come from the town's 1% local option tax fund. Any further discussion from the board? Or public comment on the idea? If not, ready to vote, all in favor of alternative 2 as presented, say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you.
I do want to comment that
Yes.
I think with alternative 2, with the vertical granite curb, my neighbors will be happier with that because it kind of reproduces what they already have. And they have not been able to understand what alternative there would be.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what that point of view is too.
There are a lot of towns that do concrete curbs. you drive through Middlebury, they have concrete curb.
Yeah, no, I'm
Ours
not
looks
talking about the
nicer.
curb, I'm talking about where there currently are marble.
Oh, I
Um,
think, and I'm gonna wait and see if Brian nods with me on this one, that's gonna go under historic preservation review for all of that stone that's holding up people's front lawns, right?
The stone retaining wall.
All those marble slabs.
I have spoken to our historian, and if we are simply removing and resetting the marble walls as is and generally the same location, the additional investigations will not be necessary.
But if it was decided to be changed to different stone, then we'd be running into some issues.
I'd probably want to run that by them and then proceed from there.
And it looks like there's a line item for, to keep the existing curb for salvage, basically what we did on Park Street.
Yeah, I wondered about that, they're,
To remove it
Yeah.
and kind of set it aside someplace that
yeah,
can be reused or,
they're nice pieces of
yeah,
marble.
there's a lot of them.
Some are
Very-
buried, but,
What's that?
some are buried, but,
Oh,
but
yeah,
they're there.
they'll come up with some that we don't
Yeah.
see, right?
Yes, there always is.
Well, Brian, thank you again for the clarity of the presentation and allowing us to make a decision that I think we all feel good about and got some input from the community, and I think that it's gonna meet with some approval there too,
Mhm.
so.
Thank you. Dave, do you want this?
You're welcome.
No, you can have that, that's fine, I have it on my phone too, so take it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Put it on your coffee table.
And I do want to say I liked the Sanderson Bridge signs, I'm sorry, they're gone.
Yeah, I know, it's a bummer.
So the one on Pearl Street by Corona Street is still
That's
there?
still there.
Yeah, that's good.
Will we be replacing the ones that have been stolen?
Yeah, probably, there's just gonna stone
needed.
them, but.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chairman. How about number 6, the resolution for a grant anticipation note? This is about the wastewater facility.
So, we have to have one of these per our USDA grant. And so Sue did her research and as you see, she got a little resolution here. I actually have the rest of the bank documents that are in here that, for this for signature too. But it's what we do for every project that size, so.
And is the project's gonna be done on a reimbursable basis?
Right, they all are.
So this is like covering cash flow until reimbursement comes in, type of thing. What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt the resolution for the bond anticipation note of an amount not to exceed $1 million at a rate of 3.15% from Bar Harbor Bank and Trust, which was researched and proposed by the town treasurer. Discussion on the matter. Just to note again, this is not new borrowing on behalf of the town, this is just a cash flow note.
And do I understand correctly that we only pay interest on the part we use? This is just a line of credit, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Further discussion? If not, ready to vote, all in favor of adopting the resolution on the bond anticipation note as it's before us, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Item 7, the warrant of bills.
I make a motion that we approve the warrant for $199,102.93.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any question on these bills? Looks pretty routine this time.
A lot of appropriations.
A lot of, yeah, the order approved appropriations. All in favor of adopting, approving the warrant as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Any announcements for the good of the community at this time? Before the board will take a recess, and then we have an executive session which we'll have with the town manager. We've got some rec announcements made at the beginning of the meeting. This is the early part of May, so we meet again before Memorial Day to announce the parade and all that stuff, okay?
Yeah, parade's happening, that's for sure.
Parade's happening. Park Street to the park.
Sounds like maybe they're,
Sounds not, no.
like, no, it sounds like they might be going back to the mill, starting at the post office.
Post office, maybe. All right, so stay tuned for parade route.
Oh, how about we did Park Street for
There's someone who's just coming into our meeting, just so you know.
Okay. Daniel Snow. Daniel Snow is
one of our employees.
in the highway department, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Before going into executive session, right?
See you later. Thanks.
So just for the benefit of folks on Zoom, someone is coming into the Zoom. I just want to make sure that that person knows that we're about to recess and then adjourn.
Maybe they have something they want to say.
Yeah, maybe they have something to tell the board.
Are
Exactly.
they still connecting to audio?
Water for that, yeah.
Great, welcome. So for those just joining, I just wanted to catch you up on where the board is. We've gone through 7 of the agenda items, and we're about to recess before we do an executive session. But if there's any public comment you wanted to make, or any item you wanted to bring to the board's attention, we are happy to listen.
We just, you.
Maybe not.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it Dan or Dave?
It says
Daniel
Dan.
Snow.
Daniel,
Okay, thank you.
And you keep on that.
Okay, so I don't hear anything to come before the board from that. So at this time, the board will recess and expect to have the executive session, and then if there's action to be taken, which there will not be, we would take it in public session afterwards. Okay? Thank you very much.